The year is 1999. The PlayStation is nearing the end of its life cycle as rumors stir of its successor, the PlayStation 2. A generational leap that is set to blow minds with graphics that rival high-end PCs and possibly match the quality of Pixar's Toy Story. In March 1999, the PlayStation 2 is revealed. 10 times more powerful than the current PS1. The next-gen console will play revolutionary DVD format, and yes, video games will also be shipped on DVDs, which can hold over 6 times as much data as the PlayStation CDs. And Final Fantasy is one of the most famous video games that are shipped with 3, sometimes 4 discs due to the high quality FMVs and of course the jam-packed game content. So imagine Final Fantasy IX on PS2, fully 3D rendered environments, more expressive characters. Gone will be the days of reading all those text boxes, because it will have fully voice acted characters all on one disc. Can you imagine? And then Douglas Perry over on IGN says that we already know that Square has plans to make a new Final Fantasy for PlayStation 2, as reported by the Wall Street Journal about 3 weeks ago. Remember when Squaresoft's CEO made it public that the first Final Fantasy game for PS2 will amount to about $40 million to produce? Next-gen Final Fantasy is going to be insane. At the Square Millennium event in January 2000, we finally get, yes, 3. That's right. 3 Final Fantasy games have been revealed. Final Fantasy IX is coming out this summer or fall, a few months after the PS2 launches in March of this year. It'll be the last Final Fantasy on PS1, so it's not a PS2 game, but that's okay because Final Fantasy X was also revealed, and there it is. It's coming to the PS2, and we got a little glimpse of it. All of this that you're seeing right now was only talked about, so which made the excitement even more intense when you hear about, like, yeah, a fully operated camera that you can pan around in a 3D environments, and just this was extremely exciting back then. And of course, like as you saw at the beginning, Final Fantasy IX was shown off as well, revealed, and then they show off the PS2 Final Fantasy X. I think you might be seeing where I'm going with this. Final Fantasy IX does release to mostly critical acclaim, right? With reviewers such as GamePro magazine scoring it 5s across the board for graphics, sound, control, and fun factor. 5s across the board, saying that it is a true masterpiece. A true masterpiece. There were some divisive feelings, though, with GameSpot saying after the aesthetically revolutionary Final Fantasy VII and the dramatic maturity of Final Fantasy VIII, the complacent Final Fantasy IX may seem like somewhat of a throwback. IGN saying, in the words of a great philosopher, over-specialization leads to death. There's going to be a point one of these days where the formula won't necessarily work anymore. You see where I've gone now, where Final Fantasy IX was kind of this throwback. And not only was it a throwback to the old Final Fantasies, it was also kind of overshadowed by Final Fantasy VII, as you heard GameSpot. Kind of, they're name dropping 7 and 8, and pretty much all of these 7 and 8. Everything is name dropping 7 and 8 because of how like colossal those games were. So there's the shadow being casted from those games, and then you have the future outlook of a PS2 next gen Final Fantasy coming out with Final Fantasy X, and it wasn't just talked about. They showed what this will look like. Get excited about a Final Fantasy X, but also, hey, we do have a Final Fantasy IX that's going to be the last one on the PS1, and it's going to come out after the PS2 is already out there, and it's actually more of a throwback. So that's not a knock on Final Fantasy IX at all. It's just me trying to say that I believe Final Fantasy IX was kind of overlooked, overshadowed by, you know, titles like Final Fantasy VIII and 7, and then of course 10, and even 11, as that one was talked about as a fully online multiplayer experience. So people were talking about Final Fantasy 11 as well, but hey, no knock on Final Fantasy IX, because guess what? Final Fantasy IX is selling like crazy back then in July 2000 when it released in Japan, and a mind-boggling accomplishment, and makes Final Fantasy IX among the fastest selling video games of all time. So it didn't hurt in the sales department. And I also read an article that when it released in North America, that it sold over 1 million within the course of a month or two, which is also very impressive over here. It wins awards at GDC. Final Fantasy IX wins 3 awards, one of those being the console role-playing game of the year. And then outstanding achievement in art direction and outstanding achievement in animation. So Final Fantasy IX definitely got its flowers, right? It definitely got critical acclaim. It was a fantastic game, just at the wrong time, I think, or at an unfortunate time. And that is why I believe Final Fantasy IX deserves this remake. I've heard a lot of people kind of questioning, hey, why Final Fantasy IX? Why not Final Fantasy VIII, right? Because that makes sense in terms of like, hey, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy VIII Remake. I think Final Fantasy VIII does deserve more love than it's getting, but 8 was the successor, the follow-up to Final Fantasy VII, which was this major breakthrough hit, and it was my first Final Fantasy, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you, this might have been your first Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy VII was, and Final Fantasy VII literally changed my life. Followed up with Final Fantasy VIII, like that highly anticipated Final Fantasy VIII. I was just so excited for that one. And then 9 was this return to roots for Final Fantasy. But many like me, like I said, we started with 7. There were many like me that felt that's a drastic shift for Final Fantasy. That is something totally different than I'm used to. But for the classic fans of Final Fantasy, they were like, no. This is what Final Fantasy is. So I can see where there was this divide a little bit. So that's me speaking from a personal perspective, where I just remember, when Final Fantasy IX came out, I remember like picking it up, I played it, I beat the game, of course, but it didn't stick with me. I think I just kind of played it, and it was so different. It was so different than coming off of 8, like I was like, what's going on here? And I guess it wasn't vibing with me. So Final Fantasy IX got overlooked and kind of forgotten in a way, where I was just like, I played it, beat it, moved on to Final Fantasy X, right? So I was so excited for Final Fantasy X, and all of the, information coming out about that. Final Fantasy X. Look, here we are right here. You ever wondered what an epic Final Fantasy adventure might look like on PS2? Yeah, so the hype was unreal, and it almost seemed like Final Fantasy IX was, it was before it came out and after it came out, just not the talk of the town. I was also like 9 or 10 at the time, so I don't really remember. I didn't have a finger on the pulse of the industry and the community and everything, but speaking from personal experience, that's where I was at with it. And I just feel like, man, I didn't give it the attention it deserves. And I will say, recently I have gone back and I've actually replayed Final Fantasy IX with the Maguri mod, and that's why I've been gone for a little while. I decided to take a break from content and all that other stuff and just kind of I needed to refresh my mind, right? And 9 was such the perfect game to do that. The Meguri mod, or the Memoria mod manager, amazing stuff. I highly recommend that. With 4K 60 frames per second, runs flawlessly on my Steam Deck. So I was able to just play through this 3 times speed, like just significantly enhanced my experience. It improved it overall because those battles are really slow without it. So you turn on the 3 times to speed up the ATB bar, slow it down to focus on what you want to do next, and then speed it up. Anyways, it hit so hard for me this time around playing Final Fantasy IX, and what a freaking game. What a game, man. It reminded me of why I love Final Fantasy so much. And just, it made me emotional at the end of it. It was heartwarming. It was funny. It was, yeah, and I actually ended up loving the whimsical style of it, the super deformed character models, and Vivi, who I used to, like, everybody used to, like, just talk about Vivi, hype him up so much, like, Vivi's my favorite of all time. I was just like, I don't really get it, but okay, now I get it. Ah, man, I freaking loved it. One last reason why I think the Final Fantasy IX deserves the remake, and also the rumors seem to be strongly hinting towards that we're going to have ATB return, the traditional ATB return for the remake. And it makes so much sense to me that Final Fantasy IX gets that treatment over Final Fantasy VIII, right? Like, so if Final Fantasy VIII were to get a remake, it would make so much sense for it to adopt the Final Fantasy VII remake trilogy combat, whereas Final Fantasy IX makes a whole lot of sense for it to pay homage to the traditional way of Final Fantasy. And I'm looking forward to a more modernized take on the traditional ATB and remake. I hope you're excited about remake of Final Fantasy IX as much as I am, and thank you so much for watching this video. Final Fan TV is back, so stay tuned. Podcasts abound and more videos for Final Fantasy IX remake, because let's face it, it's coming, baby. Get hype. Take care now. Bye then.